something that's not like meet some friends. Yeah, seriously, dude. I just not okay.
Occasionally, cold wind brushed past his cheeks. The scent of the soil, winds, and forest. One could think it would be the same everywhere, but it wasn't. In Karo, there was a scent that only belongs there. He needed to leave the village quickly, something he had always thought about doing. However, Konoe was surprised at how he hesitated now. Perhaps it was because this was the village where he was born and raised. The feelings from all the time he spent here was engraved into him one by one. He didn't need to look anymore, closing his eyes to burn the memory into his mind. Konoe headed to the entrance of the village. He walked on the village road carefully. Before long, the silhouette of the dark forest appeared before him. Konoe stopped and looked up. He made it this far. Whatever would happen, would happen. There was no point in being frightened. There was no other way. Furrowing his eyebrows, Konoe began to walk again. There was a light that appeared and disappeared between the trees. Of flame?
God. Not the snake!
It looks like someone was carrying a torch.
Okay, great. That... What is that?
Who would go into the forest at this hour? For what reason?
This guy?
Maybe he's trying to run away too. He took off his hood. When he looked harder to try to see more clearly, a strong gust of wind blew his hood back. Oh, that too. Yeah. Okay. Konoe hurriedly pulled it back up. Konoe looked behind him, startled. He can smell another cat on the wind. Someone was in the shadows. They were trying to suppress their presence. He'd been preoccupied with suspicious flame flickering in the forest. He hadn't noticed them. Two glimmering eyes stared right at Konoe. The cat stood up slowly and uttered a low growl. Be mysterious cat?
Wait, but he knows Konoe.
Well, I mean, like, it's probably like a village cat. But, like, do you want to be him or have we be him?
I can do it.
Okay.
Konoe! You? What's with your ears? And your tail's color?
He had seen them.
Can't be unlucky color. Konoe, don't tell me you're the...
Cat raised his voice and bared his fangs as he spoke. It was the worst situation. He had to avoid fighting. If the other cats made the situation worse, the more cats gathered, Konoe wouldn't be able to escape. In this case, run away! Konoe suddenly turned around and dashed towards the forest.
Wait!
Konoe heard footsteps coming after him, but he didn't look back and kept running. The cat wouldn't chase him into the forest. Konoe rushed onwards and leapt into the forest.
Wait! Konoe! I feel like this is gonna be a really important person, and my voice is just terrible for it.
The cat ran after him for a while. Before long, Konoe could no longer hear his voice.
Great, because I don't...
Just as he thought, the cat would not enter the forest.
Fantastic. Does I have to click moment?
Probably.
Nope.
How long had he run? Konoe stopped and caught his breath. That cat would surely report this to the elder, but this was the forest where, once you entered, you wouldn't be able to escape.
Other side.
He doubted they'd chase him in here. Calming his breathing down, Konoe carefully looked around. All the thick trees looked the same. The overlapping branches and leaves blocked the moonlight. There was no wind, but his footsteps made a sound in the grass. It wasn't so different from the rumors. It really was a strange forest. It wouldn't be a surprise that monsters were living here. It was better than being murdered in the village. He had been chosen as a sacrifice anyways. He couldn't live in Karo anymore. In any case, Konoe had to get through this forest. It was easier said than done, but he had no plans of dying here. Konoe carefully checked the coat he wore. It didn't seem to be torn anywhere. The coat could withstand the travel past the trees and plants. In other words, this area hadn't been eroded by the void. Konoe let out a sigh of relief and sat down by the roots of a tree. The wind passing through the forest was cold. It permeated through his clothes even though he wore his coat. Konoe's ears twitched and he drew one knee up to his chest. What should he do now? Konoe was forced to come here, but now that he was here, there was nothing he could rely on. Until the moon of light rose, he would advance carefully through the trees. It might be dangerous, but it was better than doing nothing. Monsters. Would they appear here? He hadn't heard anything about them in Karo. That reminded him, what was that torch-like flame he saw before entering the forest? Was there someone else here? But Konoe didn't understand why anyone would enter the forest, especially in the dead of night. Thinking, Konoe stared at the dark grove ahead of him, that flame that blazed and floated. Oh.
Welcome back!
It floated in that way, just like that. What? The flame definitely was an illusion. It was flickering right in front of him. His nerves shook. Konoe crouched down and lowered his ears as he watched cautiously. It seemed like a torch. He faintly saw a hand grasping a piece of firewood. A cat? Or a monster? And if it was a cat, who was it? The torch's flame swayed gently. Konoe stared at it without blinking. Possible, he wanted it to go away. However, the situation rose against his wishes. He thought it was getting closer? There was some distance between Konoe and the flame. Had he been noticed anyway? All of his hair stood on end. Whether it was a cat or a monster, he did not know. Still, what should he do?
Oh, don't give us this option.
Reaching his hand at to his sword at his waist, Konoe stopped moving. He felt he knew the figure who walked through the grove. He didn't know for sure, but the figure seemed to be wearing long clothes.
The poet.
Oh. The shadow of a certain cat passed through Konoe's mind.
Ah.
The figure before him and the figure in his memories now came together. As the distance closed, Konoe was sure.
Yay, called it!
It was the poet. His hair stood on end for a different reason this time. He unintentionally shook his tail left to right. The poet slowly drew near, holding his torch. Konoe abandoned his caution and stood. If he stopped to think about it, it should have been odd to see someone in this forest this late, but for some reason he didn't think about that with the poet. There was a mysterious and calm air about the poet. His silent movements brought relief to Konoe. Konoe was interested in him ever since their meeting before. I love this song. Sorry. He didn't know anything about him, yet he felt attracted to his existence.
Is the poet a route?
No.
Really? It seems like it's blatantly obvious with these guys. Like, you know what? Tokino's a route. Nope. Poet route. No. What?
I mean, unless there's secret routes that I like totally miss. Because I did try to make sure I didn't get spoilers. From what I know, there's only 3 routes and we haven't met any of them yet.
Golly! Okay, keep going, because that made me, like...
He didn't know why, but the atmosphere of the poet was awfully sad. He was able to meet him again. Only that thought satisfied Konoe now. When Konoe approached him, the poet stopped and put his musical instrument on the ground.
Seriously, I need him to be a route. Like,
The forest rustled. All fell silent in the forest around the poet.
Who exactly are you?
There was no answer, the poet only smiled. But Konoe kept asking questions, as if the floodgates had been opened.
Why are you in the forest? How'd you know I was here? Was it a coincidence? Who are you?
There was no answer. Konoe couldn't see the eyes behind the hood very well because of the shadows. But he felt the poet was staring at him. The poet turned to look back.
Probably why?
To the forest behind him and made an unhurried gesture.
What?
The poet nodded slightly.
Is there something up ahead?
The poet turned his back on Konoe and gazed at the sky. His long clothes fluttered subtly, something like he was looking at a dream. Konoe squinted. A cat who didn't speak and only sang, but he behaved like his songs were all he needed. It was really mysterious. The poet looked over his shoulder again. Their eyes met briefly. Konoe didn't understand, but he certainly felt it. Before he could ask, the poet turned his face away and began to walk. Was Konoe supposed to follow him?
Does he ever, speak?
I think so.
Okay.
Was it alright if he followed? Konoe was confused, and the poet kept on walking, because you learn his, real name later on.
No one left that forest, right?
Oh! Wait, is he a guide or something?
I don't know, but it's when someone enters the forest, they never leave. Clearly it's happened! Okay.
Why should he hesitate? He was alone after all.
That's probably why you should hesitate.
Maybe the poet wasn't an enemy of Konoe he had to avoid. He decided to follow him. Konoe stared at the poet's back in front of him and began to walk through the thick, dense forest. Shadows of demons were creeping closer. As Konoe looked at the shaking branches and leaves of the trees, he thought of such things. The forests were really dark. The smell of grass was unpleasant. The humidity clung to his fur uncomfortably. Konoe followed closely after the poet, so as not to lose sight of him and his torch. Where exactly were they going? The poet walked so smoothly, he seemed like he was floating. Strange cries sounded somewhere. The whole forest hushed and watched Konoe. Meanwhile, the poet was his only guide. Darkness filled his view, and then suddenly the brush opened up before him. Ahead was a small clearing. There was a large stone in the middle, a boulder. When the poet reached the side of the boulder, he looked to Konoe as if to beckon him over. Konoe approached it at quick pace. There was several large stones in the circle, and the tall grasses grew thickly. Between the stones, there was a gap that was big enough for Konoe to crawl into.
No, man. No. You're gonna bring in Alice in Wonderland? Don't do it.
Konoe cast his eyes to the poet. He received a small nod in return.
Going to Wonderland!
Konoe lowered his posture and crawled into the gap between the stones. Inside was a little damp and he felt chill when he sat down. He drew his tail and tucked it between his feet. It was small and dark, but strangely, Konoe liked it. He leaned against a stone and sighed and cast his eyes towards the poet. Konoe stretched his body and looked around. He was gone. He was just there, and he disappeared like a mirage. In utter amazement, Konoe slowly returned to the gap between the stones. Was Konoe being deceived, or was this all illusion? At the thought, he immediately crawled out of the gap. Was it a trap? Konoe hid in the bushes and watched. He heard nothing besides the rustling of the trees. Returning to the gap between the stones once again, Konoe tried to think. Even though he felt suspicious, Konoe still felt the poet wasn't an enemy. Perhaps he knew Konoe was lost, and he came with intention to guide him. Konoe had such a feeling. When he closed his eyes, the image of Karo he saw before leaving revived once again. His appearance had been recognized by the cat of his village. He couldn't forget the fear in his eyes. When he saw such a horrible thing, pain ran through his throat and chest. He couldn't go back anymore. As Konoe kept still, sleep crept up on him. He couldn't sleep here. I think that's the whole point of going there, though. Yeah. But his body felt weary. Even while he thought he mustn't sleep, he felt his eyelids grow heavy. Konoe gradually fell asleep.
Yeah, 'cause you know you're gonna do it anyways.
Enveloped in the morning air, Konoe woke up. His view was clouded with a white haze. As his consciousness cleared, he realized it was fog. We're up. And where are we? Forest of Illusion. Well, we're over there now.
Yeah, so we were there, right?
Lost in the forest.
Lost in the forest. Well, damn. So we're here. Where do we need to go? Here?
I think
we need to go up there.
Was it up there? I think. Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but that doesn't look like a town. But we were there. Right?
Yeah, we were in Karo. It was right there.
But if we need to go up there, I don't understand why we just didn't go up here and then go through there. But this kind of seems. Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe it is.
Because remember, we were just like, we went to the forest, we don't know where to go, so the poet just like led us over here, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, maybe. Well, anyways.
He got up from the stone he was leaning on. Because of the uncomfortable posture, his body creaked in protest. He crawled out from the gap in the stones and stretched. Konoe turned his eyes into his tail, and was still shocked to see it had turned black. This was the first time he'd seen it in the light. He checked the marks on his arms and legs. They were black, and they seemed even more detestable than they did at night. Konoe rubbed them lightly, but they didn't go away. His ears must still be black too. He realized how hopeless the reality was and began to feel depressed. But feeling that way wouldn't help him. He rolled up the sleeves of his shirt and began to groom. Konoe looked around the morning forest. The atmosphere was a little different now than the bright sky. Now that the bright sky had replaced the dark of night. When he was done grooming, Konoe shouldered his burlap bag and stood up. By chance, he remembered the poet. He didn't know whether that was a dream or a reality. Mulling over the mysterious events of the night before, Konoe walked through the forest. Even though it was morning in the forest, he couldn't let his guard down. He had to watch out for the void above all else. Konoe scratched at the trunks of trees as he walked. While he confirmed the position of the moon of light, Konoe carefully traversed through the forest. Even though it was brighter than it was at night, the odd atmosphere didn't change. Konoe stopped and sniffed the air. He smelled the scent of water, different from the humidity. Perhaps there was a spring nearby. Pata pata pata. He pushed aside some bushes and found a small pool of water, several leaves floating in it, but it was otherwise clear. It looks like a spring. Suddenly feeling thirsty, Konoe stooped down towards the water. I better hope it's safe.
Yeah, really.
The water was cold enough to sting, but it felt comfortable. Konoe closed his eyes tightly. He lifted his face up, water sprayed in the light. After shaking his head several times, he lapped the water with his tongue. Coldness on his face was sweet.
Sorry.
When he was done, Konoe wiped his face with the hem of his coat. He tossed out the water in his flask and refilled them with fresh water. After having a drink, Konoe felt rejuvenated. When he stood, Konoe caught something glittering in the corner of his eye. Corner of his eye.
Sorry.
He squinted. Something like a bracelet lay out at the root of a tree. It was well polished and reflected light. Had someone dropped it? In a place like this? Maybe someone could be there. Oh, I just noticed! The little cat symbol. The little cats. Okay. Anyways. The shiny bracelet seemed awfully pretty, and Konoe reached out for it.
And his hand burned!
Aww. It was an act of simple curiosity, but as soon as his fingertip touched the bracelet, Konoe felt a shock. He withdrew his hand in panic, and his heart raced like it would burst. A hot pulse beat through his ears. It felt like he had been struck from within.
Oh man, is the snake's going? No.
Konoe gritted his teeth and knelt down. His vision shook.
Does that sound like a snake to you?
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
Again?
Whether it was the ground, the air, or himself shaking, he couldn't tell.
It sounds like snakes.
Konoe didn't understand what was happening. The intense pulsing didn't stop, and he began to pant. Sweat rolled down his temple. It felt familiar. It felt like just like when he had empathized with someone. Konoe rubbed his forehead against the ground. Nice picture. A green color appeared and shook along with his vision.
Oh god, it is. What?
Oh, that's nice pixelies. Something rustled. Was it moving? Gradually, he realized this green color was of the forest. A vision was playing in his mind's eye without his permission. It was an odd feeling, like he was borrowing the sight of someone else. This wasn't his memory. Then whose was it? It was definitely in this forest, and he didn't recognize the sound. Even if he did, the ringing in his ears made it difficult to. Occasionally, the view tipped downwards and Konoe could see the ground. He seemed to be advancing, but where was he going? Meanwhile, Konoe's pain continued. Unable to endure it, he screamed out. The image blurred as if in tandem with his spirit.
Yeah. I don't know how he's supposed to do that sound.
Then the verdant memory ended.
What was all that?
Konoe opened his eyes, stunned for a little while. He breathed harshly. Pain that tormented his body was inexplicably disappeared now. Just now wasn't a dream. I just totally destroyed the entire wall. No, it was different. It wasn't a dream. Konoe was surely conscious. It was the forest. It was an image of the forest. The forest. Konoe slowly raised his body and looked at the bracelet resting at the roots of the tree. Don't touch it. It looked like an ordinary bracelet at first glance, but when he touched it, it shocked him.
I guess I can do it. I don't know who this is.
Who's this butt?
Shit.
We can do it. We can do it at the same time or something.
You remember we did that before? That turned out horribly.
Okay.
Okay, let's try it though.
1, 2, 3.
Did
you
you
see
see
it? That memory? That actually works.
Is it a snake?
Suddenly, he heard a voice from overhead. Konoe jumped, but then laid down low. He looked over the surrounding grove, but there was nothing standing out in the deep green. Do it again.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Where are you looking? You're completely off. A slightly high-toned voice echoed with laughter from all directions. He didn't know where it came
So
from.
look up.
Feeling like his breathing was noisy, Konoe held his breath. Here I am! He heard an impatient voice behind him. When Konoe turned around, a shadow jumped out. The shadow turned around in the air and landed before Konoe. A number of leaves fell and fluttered around. Konoe jumped back immediately. Is it Fury?
Oh.
Oh, it's Fury.
Oh, so cute!
So who you want?
Do you want? You can do the voice.
Okay. Haha, that's not nice. He didn't have to run away like that.
Tail?
Yep, that's his tail.
Okay.
The shadow was a boy dressed in strange red clothes. Similar, smiling mischievously, he had pale skin that seemed almost transparent.
Oh my god, is he the red snake? No, please no. He's not a rock character, right? I'm assuming he's not.
He's not a rock character. Konoe fixed his eyes on him without dropping his guard. Sniffing the air, the boy didn't smell like a cat.
I'm sorry, is he still on the ground right now? Can you imagine him like...
He's just like, what? What's going on here? His head's still on the ground. It's just like, what? No, I think he's up now.
Okay.
Besides that, he had a strange, hairless, and shiny tail snaking between his legs.
Was that just a really weird, like, word to use? Or is that supposed to be like, yeah, this is a red snake?
He was not a cat. Konoe tensed even more. The boy claps his hands behind his back and bows mockingly. You're rather cautious? Are all you Rebecca like that? Don't worry, I won't do anything.
Except for Slither Dad, you're very rude!
Oh my gosh, I don't think it's the snake. I don't know. Mr. Kitty turns black. Oh man, maybe it's a snake. Oh god, I don't even know. At his words, Konoe felt a shock that shook him from his tail to the tips of his ears. How did this strange boy know that?
You. Just what are you?
Konoe lowered his ears and glared at the boy, who put one hand on his waist and the other on his chest. Yes.
I'm like trying to figure out like how to...
He's like, yes.
Put one hand on his waist.
Yes.
And the other on...
Yeah, like this, like yes.
I was imagining like this, like he's wrapping around like myself. Like that's what I was imagining. Like, why is he hugging himself? Like, no, because he's totally doing okay.
Yeah. Then first, allow me to introduce myself. I am Fury. Pleased to meet you. As for whether I'm a friend or enemy, I can't really say I'm a friend.
So... Snake.
Oh my gosh. The boy known as Fury lowered his head respectfully.
Why do you know about me?
Why do you think?
Because he's a freaking snake!
Anger rose in him because of Fury's teasing. Konoe growled as he felt like throwing himself out on Fury at any moment.
Remember, anger?
Oh.
Hate? No, that wasn't hatred. But like, Fury?
Oh my gosh.
I'm saying I might be like completely wrong and like no, but tell me.
Scary. Well, don't get so angry. It doesn't really matter how I know you, right? Fury shrugged exaggeratedly.
Wait a minute, maybe it is like
Exaggeratedly, there.
Exaggeratedly?
Exaggeratedly.
I don't know, anyways. What if it is a snake? Because when he touched her bracelet, it was like, oh god, no! And he felt like, I think it's...
It's a big world out there. I must be really suspicious to you. Isn't that right?
Yep.
But then, if I'm so suspicious, there's nothing strange about me knowing you. Yeah. Or is that wrong?
It's wrong. Shut up! Shut up, sir! You're not making any sense.
He didn't want to hear such things. Konoe clenched his fish, and felt a sharp prick.
This fish!
This darn fish! Instead of using his sword, Konoe wanted to strike him directly with his claws. When he sensed Konoe's anger, Fury took a step back. Oh, scary. Well, anyways, don't you want to know more? Like, maybe about the bracelet from earlier. You know that thing? Yeah, you touched, yeah. Bracelet. When Konoe's expression changed, Fury laughed in triumph. He jumped off the ground and sat on a branch slightly higher than Konoe. Just popped up. You want to know, right? The bracelet made you see and feel something strange when you touched it. Fury made a gesture towards the offending object. You might have already noticed, but what you saw was someone's memories. His memories. His memories.
Memories?
Yes, of the bracelet. Fury threw something down from the tree. It was a pendant. It was a little bit ornate, but was considerably old. Touch it. Fury shifted his feet and tilted his head. I said to touch it, or are you scared? Well, if that's the case, don't do it. I won't force you.
Well, I can't fit the snake, then. I can make him force him to do it.
Konoe got pissed. He's like, oh no. Don't you dare tease me.
Excuse the fuck out of me, sir.
Konoe knew he was being provoked, but he still felt angry. He half-heartedly reached out to the pendant. His heartbeat pulsed as soon as his fingertips touched it.
Oh!
Again, this feeling. It was just like with the bracelet, the same sense of confusion, the reckless driving of his heart and body, the heartache.
Okay, he seriously gotta stop touching stuff.
Unable to stand it any longer, Konoe fell to his knees.
Oh my god.
In his head, a memory began to play. This time the image was of a room, but it was dark and unclear. Yeah. The image shook. It felt like he was in a fight. Suddenly, a shadow covered his view. Breathing felt painful. He couldn't breathe. Konoe gritted his teeth and tried to endure it. His mind became numb, and a high-pitched sound rang in his ears. Just as he thought he couldn't take it anymore, a strong sensation surged through his thoughts. I'm going to be killed. Oh, that's not a good memory. Konoe opened his eyes wide. He grasped the pendant tightly in his sweaty hand. You should probably drop that thing. Konoe turned his gaze overhead, his shoulders heaving as he panted. Fury smiled slightly and stared at him. Did you see it?
Did you feel it?
Oh my gosh! Fury leapt off the branch. There was a girl who loved that pendant, but one day bandits broke into her house and killed her. You saw it from the pendant's eyes as it swung against her chest. Every little detail of her life being crushed out of her. You shared a glimpse of that memory. The memory of a murdered girl. The suffocating feeling turned in his chest, and Konoe furrowed his brows. He was able to see the memory of these objects just by touching them, but
I've never experienced something like that before. Till now.
Besides, what could he gain from the ability of seeing memories of objects?
And why does he know that's the pendant of a girl that got murdered? Like, that should be a question Konoe's asking me. Like, why do you know this pendant was owned by a girl that got murdered?
Empathizing with the emotions of others to this degree was difficult to deal with. The shock he felt when he watched the memory of an object felt the same as when he empathized with others. No, he didn't need any more of this burden. Fury smiled mockingly at Konoe. Is that so? It is a newly awakened power of yours.
Power?
Yes, it was inevitable, I suppose. First off, it isn't something you can use as you wish. However, Fury began to walk around him in circles. In a circle. Look at that tail.
That's a green tail?
Oh my god.
Is it the green snake? Is it the green snake? Is this the green snake?
Oh my gosh. His tail shook every time he stepped forward. It won't happen with everything you touch. Only things imbued with strong emotions built up over time will let you view their memory. Furthermore, it won't be able to skip the bad parts. In other words... Fury stopped and stared defiantly at Konoe. It's the same as empathizing with emotions of others. He knows. Just how much did Fury know? Konoe felt like his fur was being rubbed the wrong way. Okay. The power of reading memories of distant times. It may seem a coincidence, but it isn't. Your body isn't either.
What do you mean?
What do I mean, you ask?
Guess what?
Oh no!
Yeah! We are never gonna know!
Oh my god.
It's the end of the episode, and his hair randomly got longer. Just throwing it out there, but
No, just swoosh to the other side. What swooshy?
It just swooshed to the other side.
It swoosh to the other side.
Okay, anyway.
We actually got more dialogue going on.
Yeah, and we met a new character, finally. Pretty sure it's one of the snakes, but whatever. Because, you know, little ice lip thingies. But anyways, so that's it. So let's all go to sleep, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye-bye.